Hi, this is Phyllis. Welcome back to my channel. I'd like to thank all of you for supporting me and subscribing. For all of my previous subscribers and new subscribers, again, thank you. Today's project is going to be this embellished gemstone bracelet. I'm using the right angle weave technique and some stringing to complete this project. So if you like what you see, stay tuned for my materials list, and I will teach you how to make this bracelet today. Thank you again. The materials for today's project are 80 seed beads, and I'm using a Czech brand. You can use whatever brand. I'm using an 8mm obsidian gemstone, and this is the snowflake obsidian. I'll be using 3mm faceted round crystal in jet color by this company. I'm using some SuperDuo beads, and I'll be using the Labrador color. Today I'm using Thread in the black color. You can wax this if you want. I'm not going to wax mine. I'm going to be using a size 10 beading needle. I'm going to be using a toggle clasp, a stainless steel one by this brand. I'm going to use the Wire Guardians in stainless steel. And I'm using my scissors, or you can use nippers, whatever you use for cutting thread. And I'm using my bead board in this pattern. So if you liked the bracelet that you saw in my intro, stay tuned and we will make this bracelet together. So a little side note about the materials that I'm using. These are my suggestions and these are what I'm using. However, you don't have to use the same things that I'm using. You don't have to use a gemstone. You can use a plastic bead, an acrylic bead, a pearl. Just make sure it's round. You don't have to use the same brand of 80s. You don't have to use the same brand of crystals. You don't have to use the same brand, or please, Thread is not, this is just what I'm using. And sometimes when I make my videos, I use the materials that I have on hand. I'm not buying anything because we're going through a renovation in our house. So we're not doing buying too many things. You don't have to use the same type of clasp. You can use a lobster, a spring. You can use anything. These are just my these are the things that I'm using and my suggested sizing. So just keep that in mind when you're gathering your materials for the project. All right, let's get started. We're going to use the right angle weave technique to make our base bracelet. I have taken the liberty of making my base bracelet using the color thread that I showed you in the materials list, but I didn't have the camera rolling. So what I'm doing now is making another one, and I'm using a different needle and a different color thread. So don't be confused. So I'm going to begin the project by stringing on one of my gemstones, 2 SuperDuos. Make sure you have culled your SuperDuos. Make sure that both of the holes are open. I'm going to string on another gemstone and 2 more SuperDuos. And what you want to do is bring these down, leaving a substantial tail, a tail long enough for you to add your clasp at the end with that. Ideally, we want to use one length of thread to make this entire bracelet. However, I don't think that's possible because we have to go do a few steps. So I for your bracelet, leave a substantial tail, one that is long enough for you to add your clasp to one side, to that side where you leave that tail. For this little Barbie or miniature or demo bracelet, I'm going to tie a knot, just because I'm not going to be putting a clasp on here. Now, this now is our right angle weave unit. We've got 4 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it is imperative that when you make these right angle weave units, you reinforce each one. No matter what you're using. If you're using gemstones, if you're using acrylic, it doesn't matter what you're using. Reinforce each one, because you're going to see some thread. Make sure that the thread that you're using is matches with your beads that you're using, but make sure you reinforce each unit, because you need them to be tight, and reinforcement is the only thing that is going to make these units tight. So I have my first right angle weave unit, and it is reinforced. And to continue to make the base of your bracelet, you are going to continue making right angle weave units by stringing on 2 SuperDuos, an 8mm, if I can find the hole. Okay. Alrighty. And 2 more SuperDuos. My thread is exiting the gemstone and out this way, and what you're going to do is bring your needle back into that same gemstone around the back, and I'm going to flip this so that I can work on my right side. We're going back into those same holes that we went in to string these SuperDuos on, and make sure you go around and reinforce the unit. And you have to continue to do this until you get back into your position. And because I flipped mine over, I made it so that my positioning is with the thread facing away from me, going away from me when I finish reinforcing the unit. So here we are in position again to add the next unit. We do that by stringing on 2 SuperDuos, gemstone, and 2 more SuperDuos. And my working thread is exiting this way. We're going to go back into that same gemstone in the opposite direction, opposite side, and pull the thread, and we have our other unit. But what we have to do is reinforce and tighten it up. And so this is what you're going to do. It's easy and it's repetitive. It might take a little time depending on how many gemstones you use. I believe I used 21, so you'll have to judge by the size of your clasping and the size of your wrist to see how much length you need your bracelet to be. I have left about 1 inch or so for my bracelet. So I have 21 gemstones, and that's gonna be enough for me to use my wire guardians and clasping to fit my wrist. When you are done with your length, with the length of your bracelet, I want you to pass your needle after you do your reinforcement, and on the end unit you can reinforce twice. So when you're done with your length, I want you to pass your needle, and after you reinforce, pass your needle all the way around, and I want you to position your needle through these SuperDuos here and have your thread ready to work in the direction down into these SuperDuos down here. So make sure that you end your thread, not end, position your thread so that you are exiting these SuperDuos going in the other direction. And I will see you in a minute. So we are here now with our thread positioned, exiting these two SuperDuo beads here. What we're going to do is fill in our ditches, the stitch in the ditch. We're going to string on a 3mm crystal, and we're going to pass our needle into the bottom holes here of the SuperDuos. And we're just going to continue to do that until we get to the end. String on a 3mm crystal and pass our needle into the next, it was hard to see, into the next set of SuperDuo beads in the bottom holes. It's kind of hard to see. Let me do it one more time for you, but you get the picture. It's super simple. String on a 3mm crystal and pass your needle into the next set of SuperDuo beads. And don't do like me and get your thread tangled in your scissors and your bead board and your table. But continue to do that all the way down. When you get all the way to the end, you're going to pass your needle into the gemstone, reposition your needle into these two SuperDuo beads, and you're going to go all the way down this side, the other side, by placing your crystals between in the holes here in the ditch. Okay, and I'll see you when we get all the way down at the other end. I added my crystals in between my SuperDuos here, stitch in the ditch, as you can see. As you're doing this, make sure that you pull not tight, but you know, just enough where there's no there are no gaps between the crystals and the SuperDuos. Your SuperDuos are going to act funny. They're going to, you know, flip-flop and do everything but, you know, lay straight. But don't worry, that is a part of the design. We need them to do that because what we're going to do is make sure that when the bracelet sits on your arm, that those gemstones are going to be elevated, and you're going to see the crystals and the gemstones and just the, you know, the outside parts of the SuperDuo, which make it a beautiful embellishment. So don't worry. But my thing is, I'm going to go all the way around and reinforce these crystals. I feel like they need another level of reinforcement, and I couldn't do that with doubling the thread. I have to do it by step. So what I'm gonna do is, when I'm done, I will meet you back at this point and our needle is going to be positioned coming out of our gemstone this way. So I'm going to reinforce my crystals, and I will see you when I am done with that step. I completed reinforcing the crystals, and I repositioned myself. I repositioned my my working thread, my needle, through this end gemstone with the thread facing away from me. And I strung on 6 of my 8/0 seed beads, and now I'm going to attach the clasp. I'm going to pass my needle back around the gemstone, and I'm going to go through all of these 8/0 seed beads and back through the gemstone. And I'm going to pass my needle into 4 of my 8/0 seed beads. At this point, I'm going to string on an 8/0 seed bead and one of my wire guardians. I'm going to pass my needle into the first hole of the wire guarding and around the horseshoe and into the second hole, and I'm going to pull my work, pull the thread all the way down to the work. And I'm going to pass the round part, my toggle, into the toggle into the wire guardian, and I'm going to squeeze as tightly as I can squeeze it. These stainless steel wire guardians are pretty tough. So once I get that squeezed in there, I'm going to find where my thread is exiting, and I'm going to pass my needle back into the 8/0 seed bead and pull that thread, and then go back into these top 2 8/0 seed beads and reinforce this clasp connection here. And I'm going to reinforce this clasp a couple of times so that, well, of course, for maximum security, but because I'm using DuraThread, it's not like Fireline, it's more like nylon. I want to make sure that we don't have any problems with breaking or moving. So I'm just reinforcing this a couple of times, and what I'm going to do is turn the camera off while I go back around it, and I'll see you in a minute. So I currently have 3 passes of thread through my wire guardian, and so I feel that's sufficiently reinforced, and I'm exiting where I started in the 8/0 seed beads, and I'm going to pass my needle through the other 2 seed beads, and I'm gonna flip it away from me so that I can work going away from me, and I'm going to string, my thread is exiting this seed bead, I'm going to string on an 8/0 seed bead and pass the needle into these SuperDuos. It's a little tight in there because I reinforced that last connection several times. I'm going to go back into this gemstone and back into these SuperDuos here, going back towards my clasp, I'm going to string on an 8/0 seed bead and pass my needle around all of these 8/0 seed beads so that I can get into position to do my final layer. So I'm all the way around into all of the 8/0 seed beads. My thread is exiting here in the 8/0 seed bead, and I'm just going to pass the needle into the top hole of this SuperDuo. And I'm going to fill all of the top holes with 8/0 seed beads. String on an 8/0, pass it in to the next 8/0. And what you want to do now is you want to start encouraging your SuperDuos to point downwards so that they almost make your gemstones stand up. String on an 8/0 seed bead. Well, not that one, it doesn't have an open hole. String on an 8/0 seed bead and pass your needle into the next SuperDuo, top hole of the next SuperDuo. And I have to get more of these out, but that's what you're going to do. You're going to pass your needle all the way down into each top hole of all the SuperDuos, all the way to the end. And I'll see you when you get down here at the other end. I went down the entire side of this side of the bracelet, and as you can see, we've got some bunching, we've got a natural curve going on, and that's exactly what you want. It's not going to be shrunken, but it's going to be curved, and you have to just be aware that you want to encourage your SuperDuo beads to point down, and you want to make sure that your crystals are sitting up, because that is the look that we're going to have for this bracelet. So now I'm down here, I'm at the other side where I have my long tail, and I'm going to do the same thing that I was doing. I'm not going to put my clasp on with the working thread. I'm just going to leave the tail for that. And you can put your other side of your clasping on the same way I did with the toggle part. But if you're using a toggle clasp, what I do suggest is when you add the toggle bar of your clasping, that instead of putting one seed bead here, you put 2 or 3, so that you'll have ease of movement when you're sliding your toggle bar inside of the clasp. So I'm going to do 3. I'm going to put 3 seed beads here when I get to the end to add this part of my clasping. And you don't have to watch me do that because I already did it with you on this end. So I'm going to use my tail thread to add the clasping on this side. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to finish off the embellishment part of the bracelet by, I already passed my needle into this gemstone, and I'm going to reposition myself here just by going up into the top hole of that SuperDuo. I know it looks a little weird because I might have some gaps and it doesn't look the same way that it looks on the other side, but that's okay. It's going to work itself out when we add our clasping. So on this side, you're going to do the same thing. We're going to pass our 8/0 seed beads into each top hole of each SuperDuo. Again, encouraging your super duos to point towards the floor and encouraging your crystals to sit up. That's the way that we are embellishing this side, and I'm going to finish off this side and tie some knots when I get to the end, and when we come back we should have a completed bracelet. Okay, see you then. I have completed adding all of my 8/0 seed beads, and I need you to notice that the bracelet takes on this natural curve. Make sure you pop up your gemstones and pop up your crystals on the side, and make sure that your super duos are sitting down. It's going to curl, that's what you want. It's not going to sit flat. That's just want to make sure that you know that, because if you were getting nervous making the bracelet and it wasn't sitting flat for you, that's not exactly what it's going to do. So, but I also wanted to make sure that you knew, once you added in your last 8/0 seed bead, this is where my last 8/0 seed bead is here, right here. And I'm coming out of the top hole of this SuperDuo bead, and I'm going to just pass my needle into the gemstone, and I'm going to untangle my thread. Yes, I am. Yes, pass my needle through the gemstone, and I'm going to give it a little tug just to make sure that these two SuperDuos point downwards, just to give them that boost, the little prompting and encouragement that they need to sit properly. And this is what you should have so far. At this point now, I'm just going to tie a couple of knots. You know, if you're not familiar with the knots that I tie, I'm passing my needle up under the thread bridge here between the gemstone and the SuperDuos. Just pass the needle there and pull up a loop. And once I pull up the loop, I'm going to pass the needle through that loop twice. And I'm going to tug on that and secure the knot. And at this point, just make sure that all of your beads are arranged properly. Just tug on it just a little bit, not enough to choke it, not enough to kill it, but just to encourage your beads to sit down on the side. And you can tie another knot there if you want, and I am, because I'm using my Dura thread. Just pass my needle right up under the gemstone in between the SuperDuo, just like that, and pull up a loop. Once you pull the loop up, pass your needle through that loop twice and pull down on there to secure your knot. I'm going to continue into my original right angle weave unit here, right through these two SuperDuos. It's tight in there because I passed so much the thread through, but I'm going to go through this gemstone here and come around on this side, and I'm going to make another knot. Same thing over here. I'm going to pass my needle up under the gemstone and between the SuperDuo, pull up a loop and make sure it's a loop. Pass the needle into the loop twice. And pull it down to secure. And just make sure that your beads are sitting the way you need them to sit in order to make the shape that you need. And I'm going to continue making knots, and I'm going to pass through a few beads before I cut off my thread. Okay, and now, and then I'm going to get down here at the other end and make my, add the other part of my toggle clasp. Remember, if you go back and watch my video when I added this part of the toggle clasp, remember, instead of adding one seed bead here, make sure you add, of this single seed bead that's sitting up, make sure you add 2 or 3. I'm going to add 3 to mine so that you have plenty of movement when it's time to wear the bracelet. And when I come back on video, my bracelet is going to be complete. Okay, I'll see you then. So now we're back with my completed bracelet. As I mentioned previously, when I put this toggle bar on, now I can see I have an issue with my thread in the wire guard. I did not sit it in the groove, but that is okay because I can take the needle and I can slide it up and fit it on there. That's not a problem for right now. But we have, and I'm glad that you caught this mistake with me. Thank you. Yep, just slide the thread right into that horseshoe. But this was not my purpose. My purpose was to show you that I completed, there you are, that I completed this side of the clasping with my toggle bar, and I have 3 seed beads here, which makes it nice and flexible for when you are adding your clasping, when you're putting on your toggle clasp. It works out so nicely. And so what I'd like to do is thank you for hanging out with me and making this project our embellished gemstone bracelet. And I hope you like the project, and I hope you make the project and share with me on Facebook. And again, thanks for hanging out with me, and hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.